Hi everybody, here we are back at Culinary Lab, and today what we're doing is we are doing a reverse seared ribeye steak with some broccolini and some roasted corn, and for dessert I'm doing a strawberry crostada. So what I did was I got started with some strawberries and some rhubarb. Here I've just gently softened these a little bit with some butter. And what I'd like to do now is I would like to dust this with just a little bit of cornstarch. Please understand that the recipe says 2 tablespoons, but I think that's a little too much. So we're going to do about half that. Okay. And so we're going to stir that cornstarch in to get the strawberries and the rhubarb together. I'm going to add a little bit of orange juice and some zest for this to just soften up the flavor. I love orange to go with some strawberries, so I'm going to get some orange zest in there. And this is going to be the filling for our crostada. Okay, so in addition to this, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just talk a little bit about cleaning strawberries and some rhubarb. You know, the thing is what we want to do is we want to maximize taste and yield and profit, but we don't want to rip the customer off. So even with the little things, when it comes to strawberries, make sure that you're only taking off the stem, just like that. Don't be taking off half of it and then letting this go to waste. In addition to that, we have to clean the rhubarb. So this is what the rhubarb looks like. It's nice and fresh. It's in season right now. And what we need to do is peel it. So I take my paring knife and I just very gently come in underneath and pull these strands of skin off. Some people may want the color of the rhubarb. And so maybe what you could do is do half and half. Just understand that the skin is very fibrous and it's not going to soften quite that easy. So, matter of color and taste, okay? All right, so I do need to add some strawberry jam to this, just a little bit, to get a little more flavor in there. This is nice and soft now, and almost ready to go. Okay, so today's whole exercise, set of recipes, I guess is what I should say, is also once again kind of directed towards Memorial Day and doing stuff outside. So what I'd like to do is show you how to do something with a cast iron pan. And this is possibly something that you could pull off on the barbecue. So here we have our cast iron pan. You can see that I oiled this nicely. I'm going to take a 10-inch piece of puff pastry and lay this in there. So my puff pastry goes in. Very simple. Okay? It's a 10-inch pan. Actually a 12-inch pan, but I'm doing 10 inches on the bottom. Now my filling goes in the center. Spread this out just a tiny little bit. And then I'm going to crimp the edges over the top. So I go all the way around for a little uniformity here. I'm going to brush this with some egg wash. And we're going to put this into a preheated oven that's at 375. This is the beginning of our dessert. We're also going to be doing some dry ice cream here in just a second while this is baking.
Chef, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you use the steel skillet if you don't have cast iron?
You can just do your best to make sure that it will be non-stick. Okay, so in the oven this goes. All right, and now for the dry ice cream. So the dry ice cream is here. We need to get our milk and cream hot. I have my milk. I have my cream. Pinch of salt. And some vanilla. The recipe is asking for 2 vanilla beans. Apologize for that. I had a hard time finding vanilla beans today. So we're going to take it from there. So I just put a little extra vanilla extract in there. Okay. So while my cream is heating up here, I want this to get to about 95 degrees. While this is heating up, I'm going to whisk my egg yolks and sugar in a bowl. So egg yolks, 6 of them, goes in. Sugar goes in. We want this nice and creamy. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Just so that the sugar starts to dissolve and gets a little bit lighter in color and nice and creamy. We're going to need to temper these eggs with the cream, so we don't want it too extremely hot. What I want to do is I want this about 95 degrees to start off with. And then we're going to put everything back on the stove with the tempered eggs and bring it up just a little bit farther. The second round of heating goes up to about 170 degrees. So hopefully, this will all go well and you'll see what I'm talking about. In the recipe, I'm telling you to bring the base up to rose consistency, and I'll show you what that is. Okay. Stir a little bit more. I don't think all of the sugar is going to dissolve because that's quite a bit of sugar for those 6 little eggs. But by the time we get the cream in here, it'll be perfect. Okay, let's test the temp. All right. So I'm at about 110. Not to worry. Still good. Just don't want it too hot to cook the eggs. So what you want to do here is you just want to pour a little bit of the cream in and stir. And you're just slowly bringing that egg mixture up to temperature. A little bit at a time, stirring, and then it all goes in. Okay. All right. Keep things simple. This goes back. What was that?
What does rhubarb taste like?
What does what?
Rhubarb taste like?
What does rhubarb taste like? So rhubarb is a vegetable, and it tastes kind of tart, but goes really, really well with strawberries. And you'll see that tart sweet mixture with a little bit of orange and vanilla is just going to be absolutely perfect. Okay, so here is now our base. We need to just bring this up just a little bit in temperature. It's going to come up to about 170. And once this reaches 170, it's ready to be chilled, and then we can go for our ice cream. So in the meantime, what I'm doing is I have an ice bath over here with a bowl and a strainer, just in case. So we don't want anything in the vanilla ice cream that's not supposed to be there. And if you're doing this with the vanilla beans, the one thing is we don't want the pod, we just want the seeds. And so when we strain it, it'll take the pod out. Okay. Let me check this. Has to come up to about 170. Almost there. All right. So once this coats the back of the spatula, we're ready. We want to take it nice and slow. Don't go too fast, because if we overheat it, then it's not good. What will happen is it is going to thicken just a tiny little bit. And what you can do is you can blow onto the spatula, and it creates a little rose. Give me a second here. Almost there. Touch more. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Yes, we have another question, it looks like.
Where do you buy dry ice?
You could get dry ice at Smart and Final. And you can also, let's see, I think you can usually get it at like a drugstore. Maybe CVS is a place to go. But Smart and Final has it for sure. And if you look at the recipe, we're using about twice as much dry ice as there is ice cream base. Okay, all right. So we move on. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to strain this. That just guarantees that everything's out of there that's not supposed to be there. We're going to chill this down, and then we're going to get our dry ice going. So I want this to be about room temperature when I mix this together with the dry ice. So this is going to take a couple minutes. And all I'm doing here is just, I've got, let's see if you can see this. It's just regular ice underneath and a nice bowl. And we're going to chill this down. Get this set up. We're going to actually make the ice cream in the stand mixer. So the base goes in, and then we'll be spooning some of the dry ice into the mixture, spoonful at a time. The main thing that's important to understand about dry ice is that we crush it and blend it. And the reason why we want to blend it is because we want to turn it into dust as much as possible in a fairly quick way so that we don't have big chunks of dry ice in our ice cream. And the main reason for that is that it's dangerous if you get a big chunk of dry ice stuck in your throat. So nothing should be going into the ice cream base that is bigger than an English pea. All of that is written in the recipe, so I hope that it's clear and understandable. And of course, if you have any questions, please make sure you ask. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, what I can do while this is chilling down, I can make my steak seasoning. I wanted to do this for you. So I have a cup of salt and all my seasonings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pepper in there first. Pepper goes in. It's about a teaspoon. So I'm going to be doing this here for a second. If you have the opportunity to use fresh pepper, I would always advise using fresh pepper over ground pepper that's on the shelf. And what's going in is some cayenne pepper, some chili powder, some smoked paprika, some garlic, and some onion powder. Okay. It's a really good steak mixture to have around the house. I use this all the time. And the thing is, if you keep it in a tight lid, it will stay nice and aromatic and stay nice and fresh. The main thing to understand is that it will cake up just a tiny little bit because of the fact that there's no caking agents in there, so nothing fake. Okay, this is what I'm going to be using to season my steak with. And while we're waiting for the ice cream base to cool down a little bit, we can go ahead and do that. So here I have my ribeye steak, and I've been drying this in the fridge overnight, and I'm going to season this liberally with my steak seasoning. I dried it out in the fridge open overnight so that it's really nice and dry going into the oven. And this is going to go into a 200-degree oven with a probe thermometer so that we can pull it at the correct temperature. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions of why and how come the reverse sear is the way we want to do it. What we want to do is we want to create a dry surface as much as possible so that we get a really good sear when it goes onto the grill. Okay? You could do it on a grill, you could do it in a cast iron pan. It's really just a preference of what it is that you want to do. But in the meantime, what I'd like to do is get back to the ice cream and finish our ice cream, and then we'll continue with this. Okay, so my ice cream base is nice and cool now, and so it's going into the mixing bowl. Make sure I get every bit of it. Maximize yield. Okay. All right. So this goes in the mixer. I'm using a paddle attachment. My paddle attachment goes in. Bowl comes up, and we're good. Okay, so now we need to do the crushed ice. So for the crushed ice, I have my rolling pin and a towel, and I'm going to be really careful. I'm not going to touch the dry ice with my bare hands. I'm going to break this up into some chunks, and we're going to crush it inside a towel. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, here's my crostada. Hopefully you can see that. Nice. Okay, crostada's done. Dry ice in the towel. And like I said, we want about double the amount of dry ice as what we have as ice cream base. So I cover this, and then I smash it even more. Okay. So we've pulverized it fairly decent, but I want to guarantee that it's really, really small, so I'm going to put it in a blender. Okay, in the blender it goes. Turn it on. It's a dry substance, so the thing is, it's going to have a hard time blending. Take a little bit out. Let's see what happens. It's firmed up on me in here, so we need to do a little bit less at a time. Okay. All right. Here we go. Turn this on. And a spoonful of this powder goes in. Just be careful. Like I said, I don't want any big chunks in there. So we got to dig down to the bottom and get the powder. And in it goes. And out it comes. Look at that. Getting right back at me. Okay, so we want powder in there and nothing else. And these bigger chunks, for some reason this doesn't work as well as I'd like it to, but we do have some nice powdery stuff on the bottom. Okay. Splashing experience. All right, so we got a nice action of bubbles in there. See what happens here. Let me see if I can get some of this powder off the towel and use that. If you're worried about any sort of burns, ladies and gentlemen, just make sure that you wear some gloves. Just be fast. It's popping out on me. Okay, so you got to see what's going on. It's bubbling up nicely. Take your time doing this because we do want it to churn a little bit. I'm going to dump this out. So that's what we want going in. A little more. See what's going on. Beautiful. Coming along. All right, so once this ice cream comes together, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you let it sit in the freezer for about 20 minutes, just to make sure that we have all the dry ice vaporized, because we don't, like I said, we don't want any big chunks in there. Okay. Let's see how we're doing. Coming together. Beautiful. Are there any questions so far? Nope, no questions? All right. Well, I'm going to blend it just a little bit more. Let's see what I can get done here. Okay. And out that comes. Okay. Look at that, coming together nicely. Okay, that took a second, but we're getting there. And this will be a nice experience for anyone that likes making ice cream. The one thing is that you will notice that when you try this ice cream, what's going to happen is it's going to be effervescent in flavor as well. So not only are you going to have a nice vanilla ice cream, but it's going to have like a little bit of a sparkling touch to it. Okay. All right. So this has come together beautifully. I'm going to shut this off and let's take a look. So there's my churned ice cream. Hopefully all of you can see that. And this is going to go in the freezer for about 20 minutes, okay? Clean off my paddle here. And in the freezer this goes. Here we go. So ice cream done. Crostata done. Let's take another look. Okay, there it is. Beautiful. Okay, now comes the steak. I have my oven preheated at 200 degrees and I have it seasoned, and what I'm doing is I'm using a probe thermometer here that has an oven-proof cable. Okay, you need to make sure of that. So the cable can actually be in the oven at the same time and not melt on you. And so this goes in. And while this is cooking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my vegetables. All right. Okay. I like my steak medium rare. So the thing is the oven thermometer is set 10 degrees below where I want it. So it's going to come out of the oven at 115 degrees, and then we're going to sear it on the grill, and then it'll be a perfect medium. Okay? So the next step here, ladies and gentlemen, is broccoli and my corn. So I have broccolini. I cut the stems off, but not all the way. I love a nice little bit of stem on my broccoli. And what I have here is I made some herbed garlic olive oil in advance, and I put some butter in there as well. And you can see that I have a lemon because we like just a touch of lemon at the very end. So I'm going to spread this broccoli out. I'm going to get some of my oil on there, and we're going to grill this. Before it goes on the grill, of course, I'm going to get a little seasoning on there. So with this herb oil, the seasoning is going to stick. Be nice and luscious. And what I put in here was rosemary, thyme, and garlic. I'm also going to use this for the steak in just a few minutes. Okay, so this is prepped. A little bit of salt. A little bit of pepper. And then here comes our corn. So I got white corn this morning. I did prep a couple in advance, but I wanted to show you a little trick. I have my butter. I have my seasoning. What I did was I prepped some aluminum foil so that these are a nice size for each piece of corn. And the little trick is that if you throw this corn into the microwave for about a minute or two, what it does is it steams it from the inside out, and it makes it really easy to get the husk off. So let's see if we can pull that off. I already had this in the microwave. I'm going to the thickest part of the corn. I'm just going to cut the end off. But once again, I'm not trying to take any of the kernels with it. So I got to do one more slice here. And then what you can do is you should be able to just squeeze this and it should come out. Might take another minute or two next time. The one thing is if you microwave it in advance, it also takes care of the little silky hairs. And when you hold on to the end, you're holding on to those silky little pieces. Whoops, and it just broke on me. Well, there we go. Anyway, let me find this. You you should be able to get it out of here without any of the silk ends on there. Almost. Okay. All right. So this is real simple. The main thing that you want to do here is you want to wrap the corn with the butter and just make sure that you season it and wrap it so that the butter can't escape. So you want enough aluminum foil and you want to twist these ends up so that when this goes into the oven, it just basically cooks with that butter. It's a really nice recipe because it only takes 20 minutes. A little bit of salt. Pepper if you'd like. So we'll do 2 with just salt and 2 with pepper. How about that? Okay. Next.
I have a question.
Yes.
For the steak, did you put it in uncovered in the fridge for 24 hours to dry out?
Not 24 hours. It's more like 8 to 12. Yes. Okay, so for the steak, when you're drying it out in the fridge, make sure that you go for 8 to 10 hours, not 24. When it comes to doing this on the barbecue, of course you want to do this like on the top shelf or on the second shelf, and make sure you're rotating it so it doesn't just get cooked on one side. And what we're doing is we're going to just throw this in the oven. And our steak is almost ready. So in the meantime, just a quick little cleanup here. So, seasoning for my broccoli. Pre-treat the grill with some of our trusted grapeseed oil so nothing sticks. Nice and hot. And here goes our broccoli. Make sure that you don't cut it too small so that it falls through the grates. And all we want to do is just get a nice char on there. This is a really crispy dish. And you can see you got to be careful with the oil because we did baste it. So the one thing is you don't want it to flare up and burn. So just real careful. Toss it often. And you can see what I also did, ladies and gentlemen, is I just did the vegetables and the dessert in advance so that everything surrounds the steak. Okay? The steak is what comes off the stove hot, and we want to serve it hot, and we want to serve it right at the perfect temperature. So the thing is I want all my side dishes done in advance so that when the steak's ready, we're ready to go. Okay, a little bit of lemon zest goes on there. Turn often, just to make sure that it doesn't get too black. Another good thing to do, ladies and gentlemen, is also maybe turn one side of the grill down, and that way you can control your heat better. So you got one side that's flaming hot, the other side that's not so hot, and that way you can keep things warm on the grill while you're getting everything finished. This really only takes just a couple minutes. I'm going to cut my lemon in half here so that I have a squeeze of juice just before I plate. I'm going to turn this a couple more times. And then just to make sure that it doesn't burn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right here on the sheet tray. And let it just sit here and get nice and warm. Okay. One thing about the crostata is make sure you do it in advance so that it has time to settle and cool a little bit. Because the thing is there's lots of juices in there with the strawberry and the rhubarb, and you want to make sure that that has a time to just cool off and settle a little bit so that it's not completely runny when you cut it. In addition to that, I've got my little plate ready. My steak's almost there. Needs just a couple more minutes. Let me check my baked potatoes. I did some baked potatoes today for you as well. The main thing is I guess I didn't put that in the recipe because I'm pretty sure everybody knows how to do baked potatoes, but we will go through the method. So what I just did was I took some nice Yukons and I coated them with oil. That gets the skin nice and crispy. I season them on the outside because I love the skin on a baked potato. And when it comes to a baked potato, what you want to do for doneness is just making sure that when you stick a knife in there that there's no resistance. Okay? It's also kind of one of those things, some chefs will prefer to have your baked potatoes a little bit overdone so that they're nice and soft. And when you cut into them, all you need to do is just a very gentle squeeze, and they open right up. And then we get our sour cream, our butter, our chives, maybe some bacon bits, whatever it might be in there. So there's our baked potatoes. Okay. Steak needs just a little bit more. So what I can do here is get my crostata out of the form. I use puff pastry for this recipe, so it is a little delicate. Let me see if I can pull this off. All right. Okay. All right, so this is still pretty hot in the center. It could use just a touch more of that cooling time like we talked about. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut into it so that we can check it out and see what it looks like. So I'm just going to do a nice little wedge. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dust this with a little bit of powdered sugar. And we're going to serve that with our vanilla ice cream. Okay, so let's see here. Steak is almost ready. One of the things that came up with the literature on the reverse sear is that when you're doing a steak sous vide, which a lot of people like doing these days, what ends up happening is that the sous vide method for a steak, the ribeye steak goes in a plastic bag. We set the temperature of the water, put the steak in. What ends up happening is it comes out wet. And so when it comes out wet, it makes it a little bit more difficult to get a decent sear on there, which is one of the advantages of doing the reverse sear in the oven. The other thing is that you will see that by gently heating up the steak in a 250 degree oven, what's going to happen is there's no gray ring around the outside when you're done with your steak. And it's going to be pink or rare from top to bottom. And all we're doing is then just searing it on the grill or in a cast iron pan. Beautiful. Steak is ready. So it came up to 115 degrees. Doesn't change it that much on the outside, but what it does is, like I said, it really dries it out so that you get that nice sear. A little bit of my garlic herb oil goes on top, and then onto the grill we go. So here we go, right on the grill. Coat the other side with my garlic oil. If the grill flames up like that, just move it because we don't want it to get burnt. All we're going for is just a nice char. And it's basically at this point going to be somewhere around a minute to a minute and a half on each side. That drying out is the way to go because you'll see that it just gets this beautiful brown crust on it. Hopefully you can see that steak doing well on the grill right now. Nice close up there. And what I do is I will press the steak into the grate just a tiny little bit to make sure we're getting a nice grill mark on there. Another thing that you need to be careful of is you could possibly see that the tip of the steak is curling up just a tiny little bit. And if it curls any more than that, what you might want to do is just cut into the side where the ribeye cap is with a knife and get it so that it doesn't curl up. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. We'll take a knife and just cut into it right here. And that way the steak lays nice and flat on that grill. Okay. So, we are ready to plate, ladies and gentlemen. So, here's my steak coming straight off the grill. I have my broccoli. I'm going to get a squeeze of lemon on there. Got a nice char on that broccoli. Don't put the lemon on in advance because it just turns the broccoli into a more of a gray color because broccoli does not like acid. Let me get that ear of corn. Brenda's going to get the vanilla ice cream for me. Thank you, dear. Here's our beautiful corn. You have the choice of either taking it out of the foil or leaving it in and letting the guests do that. My recommendation is serving it with the foil because we got all the butter in there. And by having that butter, right, everything tastes better with butter. So leave it in the foil and let them open it up. Let's see what it looks like on the inside. Nice and beautiful. Okay. Get those little sticks that go in each end. And we've got our corn on the cob. Here's our crostada. And let me get some of our beautiful ice cream.
Can you touch on how you cut the steak to prevent it from curling?
Yes, so, all right, let's see. We have a nice close-up here. The thing is the ribeye comes with a cap. And every once in a while, what ends up happening is there's some little tendinous fiber in there. And during the cooking process, what ends up happening is that tendon wants to tighten up as it's being cooked. And so what happens is that it starts tightening up, and before you know it, we have the steak curling up on us. And we don't want that to happen. We want the steak to be able to sit flat on that grill so that we get those nice grill marks. And so that's why I just very gently take my paring knife, come in here, and just cut. Just a tiny little bit so that it lies flat again. And away we go. Okay, so let's see here. Not the best quenelle in the world, but beautiful ice cream. Our crostada with rhubarb and strawberry, some broccoli, some roasted corn, and that beautiful steak. Okay, now Let's just make sure I did it right. Let's cut into it and see what this baby looks like on the inside. And we should have a nice, oh my gosh, a nice crust and the steak done through and through. Beautiful. Okay, now take a look. You can see what we're actually talking about in the sense of no gray ring. There's no gray ring on either side, but we've got that nice crust. And my recommendation is, as well, is if you have the opportunity, even though it's reverse sear and it's a slow cooking process because we're bringing it up slowly in the oven, I would still give the steak a couple minutes of a rest before I cut into it. So this steak right now is about medium. Medium rare is just a touch redder in the center. Okay. There we go.